If you can't say something nice, then don't say anything at all. This is the lesson most of us were taught as children. I'll come back to that later. A big component of my bachelor's degree in visual communication were weekly studio assignments where we would stand up in front of our class to present and justify our work. Standing there having your work picked apart by a room full of people is perhaps the simplest way to develop a callus when receiving constructive criticism. But we also learn how to give feedback too. I was fortunate to have lecturers who knew the balance between being helpful, honest and encouraging. I say that because I occasionally saw students leave nearby classes in tears as their lecturers were far too heavy-handed in their honesty. In my job as a designer, feedback and criticism are vital when producing work for clients, because it not only has to satisfy their requirements, but also effectively reach as many people as possible. Sometimes it can get frustrating, and there have been a few nightmare clients, but it's ultimately a necessity for a paid product and service. I'm not saying I have as thick a skin as I should for all this, but at the very least, I came into it prepared. And while I've been able to bring some of those sensibilities over to the hobby of cosplay, it doesn't seem to work the same way. In my previous video, I spoke about cosplay being an art form. All art is a creative way to express yourself. Cosplay is a creative way to express yourself. Therefore, cosplay is art. Pretty simple. But I also mentioned that all art is open to criticism, which would then imply that all cosplay is open to criticism. Yeah, this is going to take a bit of deconstructing. The word criticism means feedback, either positive or negative, but it's usually used in the negative context, which is why we sometimes add constructive in front of it. It's also why I group it with feedback all the time out of habit. But it also means analysis. We analyze art by interpreting what the artist was trying to convey, as well as expressing how the work has made us feel by picking apart details. We do this all the time when it comes to films, TV shows, music and books. Here's a thing, this is what I think about said thing. And yes, we do it all the time for cosplay, but that's where it gets muddled. Oh my god, you look fantastic! That's amazing work! You look exactly like the character. This is feedback. This is our opinion of a person's cosplay, and we say it all the time. We even get specific about particular details we like. But the moment people start pointing out errors, inaccuracies, or even quality, we get defensive. Myself included, because I haven't been able to resolve my professional stance on criticism with my personal, and my cosplay work is very personal indeed. We put in so much love and effort into our creations. We work up the courage to appear in public looking silly, wearing our heart on our sleeve. So it can be devastating to be told that we may have got something wrong. And it feels even worse when you multiply those voices via the internet. We all know what the internet is like though, so let's be clear. Things like sexism, misogyny, racism, body shaming, and slut shaming are not appropriate criticisms or feedback. These are not about being honest or pointing out facts about a person or their work. It's called being a pathetic asshole. What troubles me is when people start to lump together nitpicking with bullying. Pointing out that someone got the colour wrong on their fabric is not the same as pointing out someone is supposedly the wrong skin colour for the character. Telling someone their armour is on backwards is not the same as sexually objectifying a person. And not liking someone's interpretation of a character is nowhere near the vicinity of calling them a slut. Both cosplayers and fans of cosplay need to understand this. One is something you may not want to hear, the other is actually harmful. People believe they have the right to say what they want, waving around freedom of speech like it's a sword. That freedom works both ways though, because it allows for other people to call them out on their bullshit. Cosplayers want the freedom to express themselves through costume, but once someone expresses their opinion on the work, cosplayers hide behind, it's just a hobby, like it's some sort of shield. I understand that feeling myself, but the irony isn't lost on me. I don't subscribe to the idea that there is no wrong way to cosplay. To me, that is far too naive and touchy-feely. Chalk it up to me getting older and bitter. The major problem is that people seem unable to identify the difference between something that is wrong and something that they simply don't like. I also don't subscribe to the "let's see you do better" retort. To do so limits us from complaining when we have a bad meal at a restaurant or when a movie sucks. In these situations, it helps them to understand where they went wrong to make sure they don't repeat it. That's how feedback should work. It's a process that should be helpful, not one of discouragement or hate, but you still need to highlight what didn't work. But cosplay isn't a product we consume. Until it becomes such. This is where things get muddled again. See, with the changing nature of the hobby turned industry, cosplay has become product and service for some. Those who've made a career from it, or those who benefit in a financial sense, have walked through the same door that so many other artists have. A musician performing at an open mic night may not be the same as a musician selling an album, but they are both expressing themselves through music. Both sides have failed to make this distinction because it still seems like a blurry line. Being able to identify the difference between genuinely helpful and genuinely harmful feedback is as important as identifying whether or not it's necessary. That brings me back to my original lesson. If you can't say something nice, then don't say anything at all, is taught to children because they have such a simple idea of right and wrong. As we get older, we are meant to learn about manners, common sense, develop empathy and good judgment. These elements make up important basics in how we behave, how we express ourselves, and how we interact with others as adults, and these take over the original lesson by adding nuance and context to our everyday. But I think it's pretty obvious when I say not everyone develops these sensibilities, hence the need to keep repeating the overly simplistic lesson, which in itself is bloody useless when people don't develop a basic sense of empathy in the first place, so how can they judge what is nice? Craig Ferguson probably has a better way to evaluate whether or not you should open your mouth.
There are three things you must always ask yourself before you say anything, which is, does this need to be said? Does this need to be said by me? Does this need to be said by me now? 3 fucking marriages it took me to learn that.
And if that's too fucking difficult for you, then you're probably an arrogant and a lost cause. Putting yourself out there can be very challenging, whether it be marketing yourself on social media or simply attending your very first convention in costume. It's a test of one's self-esteem, and we should all be mindful of such things and remember our first times, whatever that may be, before we decide to offer our 2 cents. There is no easy solution to this. Let's face it, I'm all about pointing out our hypocrisies because I'm a bit of a dick. But I understand the slippery slope. If you allow the minor stuff and simply brush it aside, how long before it gets out of control and consumes us? Hell, I've been the target of this firsthand, where someone in the local community began with fat jokes and escalated to threats and suicide encouragement. These are the horrible, deranged individuals that need to learn to shut up or go away. I appreciate all the positive attention I receive, and I do my best to be as encouraging and enthusiastic about other people and their work. There is a lot of fantastic stuff out there, and there is also some crap. If I were to be brutally honest about it, then I wouldn't be very popular. Also, I know the varying quality of my own work, and I don't want to hear someone slagging it off, so why should I do that to anyone else? If someone asks me for feedback, I will give it to them, but I will also make a judgment as to what kind of feedback they need. Situations and context are always important, as long as honesty and empathy are the baseline. This hasn't been about cosplayers versus non-cosplayers. It's been about understanding where we're going wrong in terms of how we express ourselves and how we respond to those expressions. Some people need to eat a spoonful of concrete to harden up, and others need to learn a more delicate touch in their delivery. It's about learning how to freely express and interact with one another, and that's quite an uphill battle. We need to create and cultivate honest and open environments, as well as develop the skills to interact with one another appropriately and without harm. This is how we grow as a people. I don't want to hear bad things about my work, and neither does anyone else, but if we want to keep expressing ourselves in our way, we need to keep in mind that others should be allowed the same opportunity. It's a tough balancing act that's going to take a lot of time and effort. Here endeth the sermon.